with that, it is my honor to introduce them and welcome them to the stage.
All right, so I'm guessing, do we still have to use the regular microphone? And okay, got it. You want this one or this one?
I don't care, I'll take this one.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Dionne Benson, along with Dr. Ryan Carpenter. We're very happy to have had the TOC to invite us to this. I think we both feel that, we were discussing the HISA requirement for owner CE, which you may not know, you're getting that now. You need to do 2 hours this year. So you'll get at least an hour out of it. But we were discussing what was the impetus for it, what was the benefit, and I think this is the benefit. I mean, first of all, you can now put a face with each of our names. I don't know if you see Ryan's bills or my name, in rules that come out, but you can put a face with a name, and hopefully the next time you see us at the track, come talk to us. If you ever have a question, I think either of us are very open to that. But I also think that historically, when you have talked to owners, they often don't really know what goes on in a lot of cases. I mean, they buy a horse, they talk to their trainer, and it's kind of a black box, and they don't see much of what goes on behind the scenes. And I think this is a great opportunity to let you know what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Dionne, thanks. The main thing that I want to get across today is the value of getting to know your veterinarian, whether it's the regulatory side or the attending side, so that you can develop that relationship so that you aren't afraid to pick up the phone and ask questions. The thing that I've seen a lot over the years is that historically the vet's been cut out of the equation. There's usually the conversations between the trainer and the owner, and that's not a bad thing. But there's some cases that need that triangle to give everybody the same understanding. And I'm not saying that to knock trainers, because they're very good people and they're doing the best they can to communicate to you what's going on. But it'd be like asking me to communicate the training aspect to you. That's not my wheelhouse, and that's not what I am here for. So when you can have the three of us in the same room or on the phone talking, we can answer questions, we can deliver the information more specifically, and then I think it'll eliminate a lot of the confusion that can sometimes arise. And so there's a big value in getting to know your veterinarians, getting their phone numbers. Most of the people that I know here are happy to talk to you, pick up the phone, ask questions. We might not be able to get back to you that second, but we can certainly get back to you within the day. So just trying to establish that line of communication with each other.
Yeah, and I think, as we go through this, if you have a question, just shout it out. We're pretty informal, but we're going to start by talking about the different types of veterinarians at the racetrack. First, we have the attending vet. That's, for example, yeah? Can you raise up your microphone? Sure. I had switching from Stephanie to me is a little bit of a change. Is that better? Okay. So, I just muscled through it. Whoop, now it's not going to stay. I'll just do this. Yeah, that'll be easier. All right. See, we can change on the fly. All right, so the attending veterinarian, that's Ryan, Melinda, Dr. Baker, Vince, all of those people that you get bills from. And, it could be any of them, all of them. You may get bills from Ryan for things like surgery, but they work for you. They work for you and they work for your trainer. And I think, as Ryan said, that is one of the kind of the misconceptions is, you should be reaching out to your vet if you have a question about anything. Why are we doing this to my horse? That's a great question, and I hope that more trainers or more owners do that, because I think that there are some valid questions, and I think there are reasons for the things that Ryan does with horses, and it's important for owners to understand that. Then there's an association vet. That's me. I work for the track. I'm employed by the corporate first, but we have several vets that work for the racetrack. You'll see us around. We check horses. We do a bunch of different stuff. And then you've got regulatory veterinarians that are employed by the CHRB. Those are the vets that are drawing blood in the test barn. Dr. Blea, who works for the CHRB, and it's just different roles that we have. I will say one thing is, in the past 6 years, the ability of these three groups to work together has increased exponentially. 10 years ago, it was a little bit of us versus them, you know, but I think when we went through what we did at Santa Anita in 2019, Ryan told me that he didn't believe what I suggested would work, so that was the first he's told me that in 2019. But it's okay. Now I think if I went to Ryan and said, hey, I think we should try this, it wouldn't be no, it wouldn't be that's a stupid idea, it would be okay, why, and let's discuss it. And I think that's a huge change that has happened, and it's a huge benefit to your horses.
Yeah, I totally agree. So the attending veterinarian role, I really correlate with the team doctor. So every sporting team has their team doctor, whether it's the Lakers, the Chargers. They've got their go-to person that's going to monitor their athletes, make sure that they're physically fit. And our really goal is to identify problems before they become major problems, because in doing that, I can decrease your convalescence time. Maybe the horse needs 30 days off instead of needs surgery and needs 4 to 6 months off. I love identifying problems before they become surgical candidates, because I can get your horse back quicker with a better outcome than if I have to put a screw in the horse's leg. But we also recognize that that's part of, unfortunately, the occupational related injuries that we deal with on a regular basis. So just like football players and baseball players and beach volleyball players all have those specific types of injuries that are very unique to the sport that they do, our thoroughbreds the same thing. And that's why racing quarter horses have different injuries than racing thoroughbreds. And you'll even see that the injuries that we see over in England when they're training on the turf and uphill are very different than what we see in North America. So we have what we call occupational related injuries that are very common in whatever sporting event you're doing. And our goal as the practitioner is to be that team doctor to help identify these horses before they become problems, and then be able to intervene and come up with an effective treatment program.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the advent of soundness exams in training and racing?
Yeah, so that's something that's been honestly very new. So, and it's interesting because it doesn't happen as frequently as you think it would. So I was in
elsewhere, that is.
Elsewhere in other parts of the world. So I was in England in June, and we went to the Epsom Derby, and I was talking with the regulatory vets there. And England obviously is very different than America, especially Southern California, in that the horses are scattered throughout the country, and they just show up the race day, run, and go home. They don't do any pre-race exams. They are just basically brought in, ran, and go home. And so there's no really oversight on what shows up to run that day. And there's, I guess, a lot of blind trust that they're bringing in horses that are essentially suitable to run.
Yeah, I'm talking about the sound exams you guys do.
So in Southern California, when we went through the fatality crisis, the one thing we recognized was that the horses in California and in the United States were all evaluated prior to racing, but no horses were evaluated by a veterinarian prior to working out in the morning. And essentially there's no difference between a recorded breeze and a race. They're still going at high speeds, and that's typically where catastrophic injuries are going to take place, whether it's a sesamoid bone fracture or a condylar fracture. That generally happens at high speeds. Usually doesn't happen in a jog or a gallop. And so we recognized that there was value in looking at these horses prior to breezing in the morning, just like we looked at them prior to racing in the afternoon, in order to maintain a level of comfort that we are training a sound and fit population. And so I think when we implemented this, 6 years ago, I think what we found as the veterinarians is that there were a lot of quote unquote choppy going horses that we weren't overly comfortable with. And the thing that has been great to see over the last 6 years is that the trainers have now identified those horses. So they bring them to our attention instead of us bringing them to their attention. They've definitely learned and grown through that. And so now I would definitely say we have a much sounder racing population here than we had 10 years ago. And you'll see it when guys ship in from out of state. They'll be like, wow, you guys have a lot of sound horses out there. Like, this is not like it is in wherever they're from. And so we're very fortunate to have that. And that's been a slow evolution over the last 6 years, where we've been looking at horses in the morning with the trainer, looking at them after they breeze and having that discussion and basically teaching the grooms, the foremen, and the trainers what we consider a serviceably sound horses that can go out and work in the morning and still come back safe after that breeze.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we were most concerned about is that if a horse only is looked at in anticipation of a race, that leaves a lot of time for some horses between, true examinations. So if instead the attending vets check them prior to entry and prior to work, if they're getting almost a weekly exam, you can actually identify things much quicker and much sooner before they become significant issues.
I completely agree, yeah.
Yeah. So here's kind of what Ryan does, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it can be anything from vaccines to the soundness exams, some preventative therapies. He can also inject joints. I don't know if you want to kind of run through what your normal day looks like.
Yeah, so the general day of attending veterinarians, we get here between 4:30 and 5 every morning, and then we're going to see the horses that are going to breeze that morning, administer Lasix, because most of the horses are going to work on Lasix, at least if they're going a half mile or longer. And then our role basically is to just be available to the trainer if a problem arises, and then touch base with them afterwards if the horse didn't work as well as they expected it to. Maybe it's coughing and it needs to be scoped. We have that constant dialogue with the trainer. So it's very different than any other veterinary relationship you would have. If you have a small animal, you take it to the small animal vet, very different. I mean, we're here, we're available, we're in and out of barns, several times a morning, and just being available for the client as they need. And then there is going to be a component of, hey, this horse came out of his work sore, can you help get to the bottom of it? And so that's where the lameness exam really steps in. And so there's a lot of modalities that we're going to show you next time, but that we have, and it's awesome that we have them at our fingertips, because I jokingly say that the horses in Southern California have better health care than most people in the world. There's nowhere else in the country that you could walk across the barn aisle, have an MRI, and be back in your stall that afternoon. Like, that doesn't happen. We have a PET scan, we have a bone scan, we have all these advanced diagnostic images that allows us to see beyond what radiographs can see. So we often go to radiographs first because that's quick, easy, and the least expensive, but unfortunately radiographs only show us when something breaks. It shows us essentially the final product of that pathology. It doesn't show us the disease process that took place leading up to it. And so that's where things like PET scans or bone scans or MRIs can help identify changes that we can't see radiographically before they become radiographically apparent. And so that's where we then will look at the horse. And we don't jump on every horse that's had a lameness the moment it does. We know that individual. We may say, hey, let's just look at him tomorrow, because just like you and I, we might have a rough day, and we might have a little, sore hip, but are fine the next day. And so we utilize those modalities when we see that they're best indicated. And obviously, if the horse comes out of a high-speed event and is sore, then we kind of jump on those horses, because they're more on the pendulum of being closer to injury than not. But the vast majority of horses should be able to go out, work, and come back and be evaluated the day after the work, free of non-steroidals like bute, and be sound and not have big filled joints. And if there's a change from what they had last week, then that's when we pay more closely attention to it.
Yeah, it's just, go ahead.
So when's the best time to do an after-work evaluation for the vet?
So I think it's the day after the work, free of medication, is the best time for me. Because if your horse works today, is sound tomorrow, I am 99% confident you can train this week to your next breeze or race without having a problem.
Yeah. And I think that, as Ryan was indicating, the vets are here every day of the year. There are no holidays, there are no we get vacation, but someone's got to come in and cover us. So there is, every 365 days a year, there is a vet, both a regulatory vet and a private vet, that is available to take care of your horse if there is an issue. So, you know, it is definitely a commitment. We don't get to say, you know, you can go to the emergency vet. We are the emergency vets as well as being, you know, the regular vets. So, and I just put up this list, and I don't think people necessarily appreciate exactly all the doctors that are rolled into the veterinarian. You know, your vet can do any and all of these things, and, you know, sometimes we decide to refer to like a person who specializes in these areas. You know, Ryan is a boarded surgeon, and we can have a boarded cardiologist come out, but first line of defense, it's your veterinarian that's actually doing all of these jobs, making sure that everything from nose to tail is taken care of. Any comment? Yeah.
Just a quick question, just so I'm understanding. So is the attending vet the one that does the pre-check workouts, and then the track vet is the one that does it the race day
So
check?
the answer is both. So, for example, every horse in in California is required by the CHRB to get a pre-work and a pre-entry exam from the private vet. And then the track vets come in and will examine probably about 50% of the card in the week leading up to the race. And then every horse is examined on race day. So a single horse for, you know, a week and a half period can get at least 4 vet checks, 2 from the private vet, 2 from the regulatory vet. And so, you know, but I think that is part of the benefit, is we are able to see subtle changes and have discussions early. I mean, my goal as a regulatory veterinarian is if I have a concern about a horse, I don't want the first time that to be raised to be on race day. So let's see, there we go. Yeah.
How many regulatory vets are there?
Oh, not enough. So we have, at Santa Anita, we have 3 full-time vets, plus myself. I come in 2 weeks a month. And then we have 2 vets who help part-time. So it's about 6 to cover every horse every day. We all take different jobs between track monitoring and examining horses. If we had full staff, I think we would have 1 to 2 more, but we can have a whole discussion about hiring vets and how difficult that is.
But that's for like
Diagnostics.
Yeah, that's for like 2,000 horses.
For our
Yeah.
horses, big proponents. But in the case of a track vet, I mean, it only takes one track vet to say, hey, I want this horse to take some time off,
Yep.
and it becomes gospel, correct?
Yep.
Isn't there a way to get a second opinion when that kind of stuff happens?
That is at the discretion of the track vet. I mean, there are some horses that are so obvious, and I think if in practice, and I hope Ryan can attest to this, if most of our vets have a concern, our first call is to the attending vet to say, hey, what's going on here? And so, and as much as that can be frustrating, I can tell you the horses, we've done some data, and Bill can speak to this, we've done some data analysis on the horses that we've put on the vets list as unsound. So they have to do an official vet work. And the time that those horses take to come back or never come back is substantially different than other horses that would be in that same race.
But do you have any statistics where, and this would be some real cases,
Yeah.
where you've indicated that, hey, you do need to do diagnostics, so the owner has to spend the money for the diagnostics, and they come back perfectly fine.
Yeah, and that's honestly a good thing, right? Because then we can continue training, but we have to have some, like if for example, you have a lameness that we can't localize, that your vet can't localize, you know, it's a horse that's going off and we don't know why. They can't block it. It's not, you know, something you can put perineural anesthesia in and figure out, oh, it's the fetlock and we can just radiograph that. It is important for us to be able to rule out a number of things, and that gives us some ability to allow that horse to go forward and progress in training. It continues to be monitored, and I assure you, putting horses on the vets list as unsound is the last thing we want to do, other than pick up your horse from the track in the ambulance.
Of course, yeah, but there are some cases that I'm talking about where there hasn't been lameness. I mean, it's just like your horses race too much. But we've had, you know, span probably 4 or 5 races prior to that.
Yep.
And it's just like, well, it needs some time off.
Well, I'm not sure about who's done that, or
I'll give it to you guys.
Yeah, for sure, because like In cases where we have issues, we try to address those and to move forward in a way where our goal is to get the horse back into racing. You know, but back into racing safely. So I can tell you, for example, and it's very easy to, and we can talk about this all day, to get upset when we make that decision. And I've had people go to the press over decisions I've made, and horses have never come back, you know, after that decision. And so, by and large, when we use the unsoundness, lame, we are proven that there is something going on. Now, we try to do and work with your vet to get diagnostics, and if that diagnostic is blocking the horse and locating it and doing radiographs, that's amazing, that's great. But I don't think that's always going to get all the way there to give us, as a group, some comfort level with the horse going on. And I do know that we've had kind of, as we've decreased our fatalities, we're starting to see horses that have been in training for 2 years straight that are the ones that are starting to get hurt. And so we do, you know, watch that. That is a risk factor, but it's not a deciding factor on whether the horse goes forward. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, no, I can sympathize with your comments and frustration because I've been in those conversations before. I think, unfortunately, what we have to accept is that there is a different level of risk acceptance that maybe the attending veterinarian and the regulatory body want to accept. So there are cases that I've been very comfortable with because I've followed these horses and we have diagnostic modalities that support continued training, but for whatever reason they don't fit the box for the regulatory side. And so the one thing I can tell you is that those are the exception to the rule. They don't happen very often, but when they happen to you, it's pretty significant because it's your horse as an individual. But as a general population, they don't happen very often, but I can sympathize with those situations because I've been in there before. I think the other thing we have to recognize is that the regulatory body sometimes is put in impossible situations where they have to make these decisions. They're not going to bat 100% every time. I would like them to. I would like to bat 100% every time, but it doesn't happen. So we have to, you know, extend a little grace sometimes when it doesn't always go our way. But again, it's easy for me to say when I'm not the guy on the other end of the horse who's holding the horse and holding the bill, and what he's being told is that you're good to go, but then the ultimate authority says no.
Yeah.
Are you trying to standardize between the regulatory vet at Santa Anita, say, and nighttime racing with Los Alamitos?
So we do go to regular training. Internally, we regularly discuss, and more than you would think, we do send video to our colleagues, or call them over for a second opinion, have them go look at the horse a day later. So we do try to standardize amongst ourselves, and then we all, there's a CE program called Regulatory Reg Vets, and that every time has a situation where we go out for 3 hours and look at horses as a group. So we're not only trying to standardize across California, we're trying to standardize as much as we can across the country.
I have an example.
Sure.
Years ago, one of our horses was racing regularly at Santa Anita.
Yeah.
We decided we put her in one of those 1,000-yard balance races at Los Alamitos. As soon as we put her over there, the regulatory vet said she can't race.
Okay.
So what's our reason? But if I sent her back to Santa Anita, she could.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't, the individual circumstances are very difficult to know because I didn't see the horse on that day. And the hard part with horses is they don't look the same day to day. I have horses myself and I compete them, and I fully understand the idea of getting to a big event and having a horse that's not ready to go. You know.
What's the owner's recourse?
Right.
You have that situation where she's racing fine at Southern California.
I mean.
Not allowed to race the other.
So I'll jump in here because I deal with that a lot. And so you've heard about the panel, you know, this panel thing where the CHRB evaluates horses. They have this long list of risk factors. They basically do a risk analysis on your horse. And so when they see a risk factor, which might be Santa Anita, the 1,000-yard claiming race at Los Alamitos, their hair stands up on the back of their head quickly.
Yeah.
So what I've always said is if you're going to make an aggressive move, what you need to do is you need to communicate that with the regulatory vet and your rationale why. Because I've heard before, like, you know, as we get to the end of Del Mar, people drop horses because they just want to win, or they're done racing for this season and they're going to buy new, you know, stock for next year. And so when they see this aggressive drop, they're like, no, you can't do that, because they're thinking, well, you're dropping because there's an injury or there's a problem and you want to pass them along. And I always say that it's not my role to tell you how to run your business. That's your decision.
Right.
So if you want to take a $20,000 loss on your horse to win a race, that's up to you. So what I would highly encourage you or trainer and your veterinarian to do is have that discussion. Say, hey, look, we're going to take an aggressive drop. We're going to go from 32 to 16. It's going to look bad optically, but this is our reason why. And usually in those situations, if you do that and you explain to it, the CHRB regulatory vets are more willing to allow you to do that.
And it usually precipitates us coming to see your horse before it even goes over to, you
The
know.
example I was giving you, we weren't dropping her. We were taking her from a claiming race at Santa Anita and putting her in one of the 1,000-yard allowance races.
Yeah.
That's
I
not
mean,
really a drop.
No, it's not a drop, but they're going to see
a change.
a change from a 1,000-yard.
Yeah, from a 5 furlong to a 1,000-yard race, and someone may get a little nervous. And the thing about regulatory vet exams, they're free. We don't charge. So, you know, honestly, in my case, I have people that stop me all the time and say, hey, I'm going to drop this horse. Can you come look at it? I'm never going to say no. I'm always going to say yes. And while that may not cure every situation, if you have an exam and a note in that exam that says dropping to a lower claim level or switching to a different type of race, you know, it helps kind of ease the way and prevent those kind of situations. Now, I don't know why the individual vet made the decision that they did, because I'm not in charge of Los Alamitos. You know, obviously if we let your horse run, we feel it's safe. But you know, the best thing you can do is, as Ryan said, is to give us as much information as you can and let us look ahead of time, because it makes it a lot easier. I know there was one question back there.
I might maybe jumping ahead, so if I am.
Yeah, no worries.
Put a pin in it, we'll get to that. But you said something about some horses that are racing for 2 years straight.
Yeah.
And you start to see the injuries. There's been several trainers that I've heard that have said it's a kiss of death giving your horse time off, because to try to bring them back, all of the regulatory, the exams and just a lot of the exams, a lot of the vets, it's almost impossible to bring them back. I don't know if you're going to discuss that.
No, but I certainly can. I would say I really disagree with that. Horses come back from surgery, from injury, from time off. There are several trainers that spell their horses regularly. I think it does take some exams, but you know, if they're off less than a year, they don't even have to do an official vet work. They just have to get the exams to come back. And they have to come back in a thoughtful way, because one of the other injuries we see a lot are proximal limb injuries that for horses that have been off a while for more than 60 days, and we can, so like anything above the knee.
A humeral stress fracture.
Yeah,
would be the
humeral
most
stress
common.
fracture, a shoulder, and you know, we can have a whole discussion about why that happens, but I think there is definitely a path back to racing for horses that have 90 days off. Absolutely, I don't even think it requires 2 exams by your vet and 2 exams by our vet, and that's it. And those exams would be done anyway by your veterinarian.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good work out of Davis with Sue Stover's group that shows accumulation of high-speed furlongs in a period of time has an increased risk of injury. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of years their HISA will calculate accumulation of furlongs, and once you reach a magic number, you'll either be required to take a break or required to prove that you can stay in. So I don't have any problem with giving horses time off. I think like Dionne said, if you, and again, it comes back to information. If you can provide the regulatory body with the reason why, then you'll be fine. But the idea of not giving the horse a break because we're afraid we're going to have a couple exams done, I think the scrutiny will be actually worse if you're racing 2.5, 3 years without a break than if you're raced a year and a half and took a 90-day layoff and then coming back, so.
Yeah.
When you mentioned give the regulatory vet communicate with them, a reason why, is that coming from the trainer or to
Yeah.
owners actually?
It's
Either
mostly
or.
coming from the trainer.
Yeah, but we've actually had owners that have called us and said, like I know Dr. Bohannon, who is the senior vet at Santa Anita, has had owners come in and say, what's going on, and really feel like they needed information from her. And we don't have a problem talking to owners. I think that's, a great thing, because sometimes, and not knocking trainers, but there's an emotional component of, I've tried to get this horse ready for a year and this is the race. And then they, and then we talk to the owner and we're like, I don't enjoy scratching your horse. This is what I'm seeing. This is my concern. And so then we can have a better conversation. But also we already are tracking high-speed furlongs and in a period of time and long term as far as the risk analysis on each horse.
But for what you do, you represent the tracks, the vets, and you oversee all the vets from the tracks?
Yeah, from Santa Anita, for Santa Anita.
In Del Mar?
Nope, Santa Anita and Gulfstream Park, so.
The question I have,
San Luis
I
Rey.
believe in alternative medicine.
Yeah,
So I've owned horses for a while now, and I'm an ex-professional athlete, so I believe in a lot of alternative, but I would, wish that the tracks or would let us owners know that, hey, there is alternative salt chambers, hyperbolic chambers, available
Yeah.
to us, because it's an expensive sport, and we want to help you out.
yeah,
I
So-
was frustrated because I had to go off on my own and find trifecta.
yeah,
And then I spend all this money, and it also goes back to Ryan when he's saying there's some type of criteria where a horse sits out and then you guys look, or whatever it is, for the state vets. Well, what about the $5,000 a month that I'm doing in hyperbolic chambers? I'm doing water therapy. When it comes back to the track now, so it has a bigger ankle, but
Yeah.
they don't know the $50,000 I just spent the last 4 months on it.
Yeah.
And it comes to track and they go, I don't like how it looks, but is that
There-
given by you guys that it's a part of? I just get frustrated as an owner. I'm trying to do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And trying to do that like he's doing ethically, and then they're saying it dropped, but they realize California, the state of Del Mar, the purse is twice as much.
No, I
You know
understand
what I mean?
that.
So that's why I'm looking at all these vets are kind of getting to, like us owners, it's still, dropping a claimer from a 50 to a 25 at Del Mar, the purse is the same at Santa Anita.
Right.
And then I'm getting vets going, what's suspicious? Well, not, if you look at the purse, I'm just saying, because I can understand him, it's frustrating. And then Santa Anita maybe doesn't have a card, and we sit on a horse for 6 months, saying, well, they're not running the races. So it's a lot of criteria as owners are
Yeah.
getting frustrated.
So the worst thing that's going to happen if you do a drop is your horse is going to get extra scrutiny, right? If you talk to us ahead of time, we can kind of coach you through that. First of all, I assure you, we're not like, I don't like the way the horse looks. We take this very seriously, and I honestly, I lose sleep over the decisions I make, and I wish I were 100% right. But anything that is in your horse's HISA record, we can look at. If it's not in there, we don't see it. So, and honestly, if a big ankle were the only criteria for scratching a horse, there would be a lot more horses scratched. So we don't look at just a horse that has an ankle that, is big and has a lot of isn't really flexible. Now,
And that's what the trainers are telling. I know there's a separation.
Right.
They
And
don't
that's-
tell us. They put
right.
We all know that. That's why we're here, because we all
And-
know about sales.
exactly.
We all have businesses. We understand.
Well,
Don't tell the client too much. We
right.
want to be in. I understand.
that's part of the reason if you call me, I can find out what happened. I can find out why this happened. I know, Bill has called me on more than one occasion to say this person's angry, and I go through and say, this is what we saw, this is what we did, and it's usually we looked at the horse on Wednesday, we looked at the horse on Thursday, we talked to the trainer both days, and we gave them the opportunity to do this, that, and the other thing, and we still came there on Saturday, and it was still in the same position.
What about the question that said, is there something that you can provide? I'd be happy to know. Well, we have salt, we have other things
Yeah.
here that you owners may not be aware of, because nothing against, we kind of rely on the trainers but the price. They're going along, but as owners, if we know
Yeah.
that there's something there, I'd be happy to pay for that.
I know at Santa Anita there is a salt chamber where you walk the horses in and they do the salt therapy, and then there is a
Saltwater
cold
spa.
water
Spa.
salt spa which goes up to the level of the chest. In terms of hyperbaric, the only hyperbaric chamber that I'm aware of is at San Luis Rey. There used to be one in Bradbury, but it's not functional anymore. The problem with hyperbarics is
They last
can
us.
go boom.
Yeah.
And so they're a very risky,
Right.
thing. So the one at San Luis Rey Equine Hospital has been there for a number of years.
Yeah.
And so we utilize those facilities. And it's unfortunate because you have to van your horse down there, stay there for, a week or so. They're out of training, it would be nice to have that on the property, but
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
high
anyone's going to
risk.
spend the millions of dollars to put the hyperbaric on the property.
The salt that you're mentioning, the two modalities.
Yeah.
Like how can someone access that for the horse? Is it through the trainer?
Through the
Is it
trainer,
through
yeah.
the attending vet?
Through the trainer.
Yeah, and those are private entities. We allow them on the site, but it's not a track function, so.
Really going on what you said, I really like what you're saying. Is there any way, and if this doesn't fall in the veterinary, thinking about Anita, can it fall somewhere else that it's on the TOC or say, these are different modalities that are available to owners? Because what you just said, it's not exactly, our trainers are so overwhelmed. So they're not, they're just, they are also managing a business. So as an
Yeah.
owner, who are the chiropractors that are coming out? Who are the really good farriers? What is the salt? Where are the hyperbaric chambers? Those sort of things would be
Yeah.
great if we can have a list of who's been approved that we could
Right.
possibly recommend.
Well, and I mean,
That list in one location does not exist,
No.
but that information is easily accessible. And we
Exactly.
can work with Bill
Bill
to
to get that.
provide
yeah.
that.
Want to
And
make your job easier,
Oh,
so we're all a team.
Although,
I think this could be something good for the owner relations. committee
absolutely.
to work on.
And I think the other thing is you have to work with a trainer who's willing to use these modalities, because there have been situations where we have very back-sore horses and we suggest certain things and we get pushback. So, it's not just from you, it's from you to the trainer, it's from us to the trainer. And, things like farriers, I think I have one of our track vets is a certified journeyman farrier, as well as being a veterinarian. And I cannot let him tell you which farriers are the best because I would get sued 100 times. But that being said, yeah, I mean, keep in mind, we can't tell your trainer which farrier to use, but we can provide the information on what alternative therapies are available.
You can
Yeah.
neutral party like
Yeah.
Yeah.
TOC, we can
Yeah.
work on organizing that and collaborating.
That's easy to do. And Ryan, you said we wouldn't last 50 minutes. We haven't even gotten through half of the slide. No. Just to give you an idea, what we do as regulatory vets, I know everyone knows the scratches and, when we have to go in and look at your horses. But in addition, we monitor training every day. So if your horse looks off on the track, we follow it back and we talk to your attending vet. We do pre-race exams. We do emergency stabilization of horses. My least favorite thing is when a horse gets hurt. I will take all the yelling from all of the owners to avoid that. And, if we have moved the ambulance, I feel like we've failed. And I can tell you all of the vets on my team feel like they've failed if the ambulance moves. We also do the required exams. We do your vet list works. And we have a lot of administrative functions. So, when Stephanie and I were talking before we started talking about HISA, and I said one of my biggest frustrations with HISA is the fact that I spend so much time on administrative work now and not with the horses. And it's just like your trainer has to spend more administrative time. You have to spend this time with Dr. Carpenter has to spend a lot of time entering stuff into HISA. And but at the end of the day, we have to decide, it is the right way to go. And I think when you talk about the way that the medication policy has evolved, I mean, we started this medication policy 6 years ago, so it's not a huge change in some ways. And then we have to develop policies regarding safety and welfare. I can tell you when we had the fires in Santa Anita, all of the vets were out there. We were all concerned. We were all ready to evacuate horses if we needed to. And we have to have plans for stuff like that. And then our other job is to answer questions and concerns from trainers and owners. There isn't a day that goes by that I'm not getting a call. Sometimes I'm elsewhere in the world and I pick up my phone 24/7. It does not matter. But that's the job. I mean, our job is to help get these horses around the track and back home safe. And I can tell you one thing that has made me very happy is as we have done this and we watch horses come back from racing, I'm not seeing horses limp back from racing anymore. I'm seeing them bounce on the way back from their race. Ears up, jogging, happy, liking their job. So, I mean, I think that's a huge change, and I know it doesn't come without a lot of bumps in the road, but I think it's been a good change in how we've dealt with our stock. And I also think horses are racing a little older now. So.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said earlier, we have a very sound racing population in Southern California, and it's very different than other parts of the country.
Yeah.
And I think that's frustrating at times because you might have one of those choppy going horses that just doesn't fit in California anymore, and I sympathize with that. But overall, from the 30,000 foot view, our population is uniquely different than the rest of the country. I know that sometimes makes owners think, well, I'll just go to Kentucky where it's easier, or Arkansas where it's easier. And I've pulled a number of Coggins to send horses out of state for that reason alone, but that becomes less and less as the years go on. That was very common in 2020, 2021, pretty uncommon now. So I think we've seen a cultural shift, not only amongst our trainers, but in our approach. The one more race mentality, I think, is fading away, which is good. Your horse, there's no point of running another bad race at the risk of a serious injury. If your horse isn't going to be competitive, then we want to give you that information to help you make the best decision for your horse and your philosophy of racing. So.
And I think the good news is, we have a metric that shows it's worked. If you look back, 2019, I understand that was a horrible year. It wasn't unfortunately, it wasn't an unusual year. If you look back to 2018, 2017, 2016, we weren't significantly different in numbers of fatalities between the start of 2019 and the start of 2018 and 17. This year at Santa Anita, we had a 0.3 fatality rate per 1,000. When I started this job, it was 3 per 1,000. So that's a 90% reduction. And if you could get 90% safer, and I understand that means that we are going to capture some horses that could make it around safely. But I don't think we have the luxury of taking the risk a lot of times, and I assure you, none of us as regulatory veterinarians take scratching a horse lightly. But as I tell my vets, it's not our job to put them in the starting gate, it's our job to not put them in the ambulance. So I think if we are able to do that, and I do have a philosophy that our goal is to get horses back into racing when we scratch them, or when we pull them out, or when the trainer scratches them. And if we don't see a path back to racing, I think it's our job to tell you the truth, and so you don't spend money continuing to train a horse or continuing to pay for a horse that's not going to make it back. And you can then decide if you want to ship it somewhere else or retire it. But I think our job is really as regulatory veterinarians is to work with the trainer, the private vet, and the owner to make sure these horses are safe and racing. So as long as they can, yeah.
I got a thought on that. Your role, what you're saying about what you're just wrapped with about the safety of the horses, I believe also our role as owners, we take on that responsibility with the horses when we buy them, put them out on the track, we want to see them race. There's the financial part of it, but we have a responsibility to make sure everything's being done for their safety and for the humans that are riding them.
Absolutely.
So I think that we have as equal of a responsibility.
Yeah, and I think
that partnership is very important.
Absolutely, and that's the way we see it. We are ecstatic when we hear from owners. You can call us and yell at us. I say everyone gets 2 minutes, right? You can yell for 2 minutes and then we have to have a conversation. But honestly, if we can have a conversation, I had a trainer call me from Florida saying, I don't know what to do about this horse, it's choppy, they found it lame in 3 different legs. And so I'm gonna go down with him when I'm in Florida in a couple of weeks and look at the horse, and we're gonna have a discussion about what the best way is to get that back to racing. And we're gonna get the entire team on board. Now, does that mean that the next time that horse goes out, if it's lame, it's going to pass? Absolutely not. It just means that we have to have a discussion about what we think is going on and get their vet involved. Yeah?
Couple things. One, are you guys, now that you're doing so much more vetting, looking at the horses, starting to put stats together, even with AI, so you can start But going forward, learning and being actually more integrated to this gentleman's thing that I know for a fact I've trained for my whole life, stretching alone, just doing all the back stuff. There's just so much you can do to horses that if you're truly treating them as athletes, there needs to be, they have hay nets, some horses go upside down, and it's without question, their backs are going to get sore, their backs get sore, they lose their rear end, something's going to happen. So all that, before a horse is even lame or even sore, can prevent, as a true athlete, because you don't see a football player and not stretching and doing all that, it's just unheard of. So integrating that into the future so that there's preventative before even any sort of signs.
Yeah, so we're looking at a number of different AI modalities. I mean, first of all, I don't know if you know this, but there's a camera at Santa Anita that's monitoring your horse to see if it's sound, and it doesn't make the decision, but it does send us notifications if we see a horse that's uneven, an asymmetric, which is basically lame. And so we have all that technology, plus we have technology that is giving your horse a score, a risk score. So it looks at things like the PPs, it looks at the medical history, it looks at whether the horse has been on the vet's list, how long the horse has been, like if the horse has had a 90-day break between races, that's a slight risk factor. A gelding is more at risk than a mare, and a colt is more at risk than a gelding. Does that mean we're going to scratch all the colts? No, but we take that and it is distilled down into a risk score, and it allows us to go see those horses with the highest risk more often than we would see horses with a low risk score. And that's kind of how we triage, because while your vet does the heroic job of looking at every horse that's going to work and every horse entered, we only look at about 30 to 40 horses that are going to work every day. And because we just simply do not have the manpower. So we use those scores to really triage. And the CHRB uses those factors to see which horses that are going to end up on the panel exams. But really, like, the goal of AI is to make all those very automated, so we're not going through by hand PPs, which is how we started. When we started this whole thing, I would spend hours, and we have another vet who spends hours a day going by hand through the PPs of every horse to identify which ones are at highest risk. And so yes, the only issue we have is if it does not end up in the horse's medical record, we do not know. We have no way of knowing what happens. And, would it be great if every trainer stretched their horses and did massage and chiropractic? I mean, I do chiropractic, massage, and, regular body work on my personal off-track thoroughbreds that are evented and do dressage, but that's my trainer and my choice. So, I think that behooves you as owners to have those discussions with your trainers and say, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? What's available to me? Because there are things that are available that should be employed. And we're happy to provide the list of what's available, I think, with the cooperation of TOC, but I can't also force them. And I think you can vote with your feet in how you get those things done to your own horses.
Are those risk factors or the watch list, et cetera, shared with the private vets?
So I'm always happy to talk to them. It's a CHRB document, so it wouldn't be my document to share as far as the risk factors, but I think we've talked enough about the risk factors. By and large are based on a gentleman named Tim Parkin, who's done the equine injury database analysis. So that's how I know that a gelding is more risky than a mare and a colt is more risky, and horses that have had certain times off. So it's not as if they're hidden, but maybe it's worthwhile to have that discussion at some point with the vets, have a meeting and talk about what we do.
I'm talking about the horses that you might have on a watch list.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, that's the CHRB's document, is for the racing, is the watch list. We just look at horses, and I think it's, I don't, the CHRB's information?
No,
the HISA information is, I don't know if what you see. You see, I mean, we only see the medical record from HISA. So we do our own risk analysis, and I would say if we have a concern about a horse, our first call is the vet.
Yeah, but to your point, I don't know currently who is on the watch list. I know generally a couple horses that I've been in communication with them, but if this list exists and there's 15 on them, I don't know who they are.
There's not a list like that. I mean, what happens is if your trainer enters your horse to work, we start an analysis of that horse. And then if we go check the horse, we're a little more concerned about it. If we don't, or sometimes we just check the 2-year-olds that are just coming in to get a baseline. Or if we haven't checked a horse in a few months, we'll check them. But the goal isn't to identify which horses can't work. It's just to get a scatter shot of exams on a group of horses. And if those horses have more concerns, then we are likely to check them more often. So a horse that's been on the vet's list, for the year after it's on the vet's list, it has like a 30% higher chance of having a catastrophic injury. So those horses we tend to check more. So, yeah.
For the sake of time, we'll go ahead and wrap with this portion so we can make it out to the barn for the evaluation. Would you provide everyone with, if they do have additional questions, how they can reach you, if you prefer that goes through the TOC office? And then also, can you give a glimpse of what we can expect at the October part 2?
Yeah, so you want to give emails at the end or now?
Yeah, I mean, the TOC has my email, has my phone number.
That
You're
might be
welcome to
easiest,
share
that
it
way
with
no one's
whoever is
trying to write it
interested.
down. You can phone number, email, talk to Bill.
Yep.
I'm happy to talk to anyone. And then the October program is going to be a deep dive into the diagnostic modalities. I think we'll start with everything from radiographs and blocking to PET scan and MRI, just give you an idea of what it looks like when it's done, what kind of images we get, and what benefit we see from it. Anything to add to that?
Nope, I think the main thing is we want to show you what we can do. I mean, a lot of you guys have paid bills on PET scans and MRIs and things, but we want to show you what it is, show you where it's located. Because like I said, we're very fortunate to be the only racing area in the country that has it literally in our back door. And through the foundation, we can provide it to you at a cheaper price than you can get anywhere else. So you can get a PET scan MRI cheaper than anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, to give you an idea, I think we're $900 for a PET scan?
I don't know specifically, but around there.
It's $2,200 in Southern Florida.
Thank you.